Hello, Petal. How are you getting on? How's your week been? How are things? It's been a bit chaotic over here, but things are getting done and we like that. So the decorating's nearly all finished. Hopefully I'll have the coving up and the vinyl done by, next couple of weeks. And then it's just getting everything put back in again and some shelves put up, which is always fun, as you know, especially trying to get them, make sure they're straight. But yes, it's that time of the year and we've got a big bank of weather coming in apparently, big bank of snow coming in, which the whole of the British media is panicking about like nobody's business, and like, oh my goodness, it's gonna be the Armageddon, rah rah rah. And it's not going to be 3 foot of snow, it's going to be about 2 inches if you're lucky, depending on where you are in the country. But of course, if you get one snowflake on the train tracks, oh my goodness, the whole infrastructure grinds to a halt. So I'm just going to bunker down, yes. How about you though? How are things going with you? As ever, you know what I'm going to say. If you want to leave a message in the comments or drop me a line or whichever way you'd like to do it, just like to make sure that everybody's doing okay, especially this time of year, which I know is very difficult for a lot of people. I think it's like 5 years now since the world changed. It's kind of like, I remember specifically more December of 2020 than anything else, and it's been a crazy time, and yeah. So we like our little corner of the internet where we can hide from absolutely everything. It's awesome. So as ever, if you leave me a comment or drop me a line, and I'll repeat myself, much apologies for that, but the most important thing is I just want to make sure that you're okay and you're doing fine. We're going to be doing chapter 8 of Odds and Gods, and we can do a little catch up on the last one, which, if I remember rightly, so we had, Pan went off to Sunnyvoyde, and he had a little word with Lug, and they had a little banter, and just basically say, here, don't worry, mate. And Osiris says, he's fine, he's alright, and Lug's like, what are you telling me? and Pan's like, don't worry, he's just fine, he's fine. So, and also we found out that Pan's got about 1 billion degrees, which, I'm sorry, but at his age, you'd expect it, wouldn't you, really? But they're all from the same place, strangely. All from the same year. Go figure. But if you've got to have that amount of doctorates, then crack on, whatever you can do. That's always a good thing. And so we got on that part, and then what happened next? Doopy doopy doo. See, I'm gonna have to use my memory here. This is dangerous territory, I tell you. What else happened? Oh, that was it. Yes. So they caught up with Mandy. Pan caught up with Mandy. Is it Mandy? Sandra. That's it. She caught with Sandra. And she wanted to come along and join them because she's lost her job and she was a bit put out by that. So she thought, well, best revenge. Let's get in with the god and get revenge on the place that employed you for so long. Oh, but the jollity does not stop there. They go toddling off and they catch up with Sandra's boyfriend Carl, who's apparently a bit of a unit. I don't know what you call like big fellas over your way, but over here it's like he's a bit of a unit, he's a bit of a big lad. So yeah, he's a bit of a big lad, so he's going to be the muscle, which is awesome. They all join up with Osiris and decide, we're gonna fight fire with fire. We're gonna get the best lawyer in the business. Oh yes, can you imagine that? A lawyer that is evil enough and slimy enough and reptilian enough to help Osiris win a case. Oof, that's gonna be a tour de force and then some. So they're pootling along on a little road trip, and of course Sandra's got a bit of a peanut bladder, so she needs to stop every sort of few miles to relieve herself. And as they do on this point, they are stopped by an assailant who is vanquished. It's vanquished very much so by a shoe to the back of the head. Thank you, Sandra. But what they did find out before that is that it was Kurt Lundqvist who's actually coming along to give them a warning. Props to Kurt. He's throughout Tom Holt's books, he's been a bit of a good boy and a bad boy and a bit of a character that's a bit duplicitous. But he's good at heart, bless him. And one day I'll get his accent right. Yes, and then we end up, and then, Julian has an accomplice. Dun dun dun. Who is it? It is none other than that slimy wench, Mrs. Henderson from the Sunnyvoyde People's Home. And she's actually doing it because she wants to make some extra money and bump off Osiris and get him out of the way so she can run the place on her own. What people would do for money. Honestly, seriously, money is one of the worst things in this world. Money and power. What can we do? So that's a little rundown, if I remember rightly. If I remember anything wrong, please let me know. By all means, you guys can join in and give all the sort of recaps and stuff. I don't mind. So, the monologue's a bit longer, but we have actually spent a couple of minutes doing the roundup. So, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. How about getting on to Chapter 8 of Odds and Gods by our beloved Mr. Tom Holt? To get from the Pinfold Gap service area to the Garden of the Hesperides, you can follow one of two routes, the easy long way or the quick, difficult one. Turn off here, Osiris said. We haven't got all day. The easy long way is overland to Folkestone, ferry to Ostend, through Germany and Austria to what used to be called Pomerania, then turn right and on down through Armenia to the Caucasus. Volley and oars, and you are there. Because nobody likes to do anything easy these days, they know. When you find yourself falling over backwards trying to see the tops of the mountains, you know you've arrived. There's even a chairlift to the top, although it's not 100% reliable, narrators know. It was installed in 1906, and the only maintenance they've got around to doing is one coat of paint on the railings at the bottom with a dab of grease on the ratchet once every change of General Secretary. Are you sure you... Of course I'm sure, Osiris replied. I've got the map, haven't I? The other way is overland to Great Pinfold, leave the van in the car park opposite the church, scramble 3/4 of the way up Pinfold Fell to the small cave that very few people know about, and summon a demon using the handy implements provided. The demon then does the rest. In theory. Wouldn't it have been simpler, Sandra interrupted, just to phone his office and make an appointment? The two godson Kurt Lundqvist looked at her. Well, she said. No, Pan replied. Why not? For one thing, Pan said, he hasn't got an office. For another, he's not on the phone. For a third, he doesn't keep appointments. Satisfied? Sandra frowned. Funny sort of lawyer, she said. Pan shook his head. Not in context, he replied. You wait and see. Oh, Sandra thought for a moment. So what exactly do you have to do if you want to get to see him, then? Osiris and Pan looked at each other. It's a long story, Pan said. I expect we've got time. There was a rumbling from the driver's seat. It could have been thunder in a tin-panelled canyon or Sandra's boyfriend talking. Signpost, he said. Great Pinfold. Half. It took two divine brains a comparatively long time to work out that he meant half a mile. That is fine, Osiris said. Once we're in the village, go along the main street and then just keep heading uphill. You can't miss it. Why hasn't he got an office? The two gods exchanged glances and then turned to Lundqvist, who was occupying the time in honing the edge of his Sykes Fairburn combat knife on the sole of his boot. You explain it, they said. Me? Yes. All right then. The gods, Lundqvist explained, created the first man and the first woman. Their motives for doing so are lost in the mists of comparative religion, and speculation is now probably futile. The most convincing explanation is that at the time they were destruct testing the maxim, everybody makes mistakes. The first man was called Epimetheus, and the first woman was called Pandora. Contrary to what the scientists would have you believe, neither of them was 4 feet tall, hairy, stooped, and equipped with a jaw like a snowplough. Although Epimetheus did have a mole on his nose, and Pandora's black hair had a grey wave running across it from the moment she came into life, the result of Athene neglecting to wait until the paint was completely dry. And there they were, just the two of them, and it occurred to the gods that apart from comprising a complete set of first editions, they weren't much use for anything. They're not supposed to be used for anything, Athene replied, when this point was drawn to her attention. They're just supposed to be, that's all. They're the meaning of the universe. The other 11 gods looked at her. Man, she said, looking away is the measure of all things. Come again. Man, said Athene, defines the cosmos. Man is the independent life force, entirely separate from the Creator, and possessed of free will, who, by the very act of observing causes to all things to exist, simply by virtue of being susceptible of objective observation. There was a short pause. Fair enough, said Vulcan, god of fire, metal, and in due course, cordless screwdrivers. So what is the other one for? Venus, goddess of love, frowned, wrinkling her lovely nose. Which one do you mean? She said, and sneezed. She had just been created herself from the sea spray crashing against the rocks of Paphos, and howling robes and electric hairdryers was still several giant conceptual leaps away in the future. The short one with the round bit sticking out, Vulcan replied. By the way, is it meant to look like that, or did you take it out of the oven too early? Easy, Athene replied. She tells men what to do. There was another silence, marred only by the distant groaning of tectonic plates and the grating sound of time running in. I thought you said he's got free will, said Mars, god of war. Sure. Athene turned round slowly and gave him a long, cool stare. And he really decides to do what he's told, if he knows what's good for him, that is. Ah, right. Yeah, that sounds pretty logical to me, said Mars, briefly usurping Athene's prerogative as goddess of wisdom. So, do we cut a tape or break a bottle of wine or something, or is that it? That's it for now, Athene said. We just let him get on with it. With what, Athene? Athene gave her new sister a glance of disapproval. Venus, she said, I think you and I need to have a little talk. Now, to begin with, there were the inevitable minor glitches. For one thing, Venus completely misunderstood Athene's whispered explanation of her new duties, with the result that Mars spent the first few days of human history dragging the first humans off each other before they gouged each other's eyes out, while Vulcan rather shamefacedly admitted that while installing the digestive system and associated plumbing, he'd had the blueprints upside down and read the scale as inches rather than centimetres. It was, however, too late to do anything about that now, and, fortuitously, the system has installed did actually work. Just about. It wasn't until much later that the real design faults began to show up. Apollo, god of the sun, was the first to notice, and for a day or so he was inclined to ignore his misgivings. It was too improbable for words. Surely not. But no, he was right. He was going to have to tell the others. Cheerful little sods, aren't they? He therefore observed casually over dinner. I mean, to look at them, you wouldn't think they had a care in the world. He reached for the salt, and in doing so became aware of 11 pairs of eyes fixed on him. Cheerful, Mars said. That's the way it looked to me, Apollo replied, a slightly defensive tone creeping into his voice. Of course, I could be wrong, probably am, but... Of course they aren't cheerful, Athene replied quickly. They can't be. They're mortals, creatures of a day. Out, brief candle. Don't say silly things like that, Paul, or you'll upset people. Narrator's note, yes, I did stop from having Kurt Lundqvist doing the narration and going back to myself because it's hard work. Nevertheless, first thing the next day, Athene crept out of heaven by the back door and hurried down to earth, disguising herself as a clothes moth, an inept disguise, and there was yet no clothes, but she was flustered. She buzzed through the lazy summer air and hovered for a while outside of the mouth of the cave where the mortals had taken to cowering during the hours of darkness. Inside, she could hear giggling. Not, she had to admit, an auspicious thought, but it was probably just a freak occurrence. Any minute now, they'd start snivelling and bemoaning their lot, like they were supposed to do. She spread her wings, and since she was missing breakfast, spent the thoughtful quarter of an hour in a mimosa bush. When she returned, the first thing she noticed was a smell. A delicious smell. So enchanting was it that before she knew what she was doing, she'd flown straight into the bole of a tree and knocked herself silly. It was the smell of cooking. To be precise, mushrooms and fried tomatoes. Narrator's note, nom nom, nommy nom. That sounds nice. The gods, it should be explained, ate their food raw and drank rainwater. After all, when you're immortal, the risk of catching some fatal disease from raw food is minimal, and since there's no way a god can die of starvation, meals were in any case little more than a ritual observance designed to while away half an hour of endless, all the shops are shut and it's raining eternity. Nothing but salad for the rest of time. Small wonder that the gods were all as miserable as sin. Small wonder, too, that they regarded this as the proper state of affairs. Happiness was not a concept they could easily get their heads around. Athene uncrumpled her wings, adjusted a bent antenna, and took off. Something would have to be done about this. About a week later, Epimetheus and Pandora were just waking up from a nice lie-in and wondering whether to have breakfast on plantain fried in honey or glazed eggplant with cinnamon when there was a knock at the cave mouth. They looked at each other. "Visitors," said Epimetheus. "Oh, goody," replied his wife. "Just think, Ep, our first guests. Isn't this wonderful?" "Rather," said our common ancestor, jumping up and running into the cave mouth. I'm sorry, but I can't help thinking of them in a 70s sitcom. Gosh, life's fun. Outside the cave stood a tall figure in a blue uniform with a peaked cap. There was, Epimetheus subconsciously noticed, a strange, almost unfinished look about him, almost as if he'd been called into being by someone who had a vague idea of what he should look like, but insufficient detailed knowledge to complete the job. Epimetheus couldn't help feeling that, viewed from the back, he wouldn't be visible. "Sign here," said the man. "Certainly. How do I do that exactly?" The man showed him, and Epimetheus followed suit enthusiastically, until the man took the pen and clipboard away from him. Then he handed him a parcel. It was big and chunky, and it rattled excitingly when you shook it. It also said, "Do not open this parcel" on the label in big red letters, and if Epimetheus hadn't been so completely carried away with the delirious excitement of it all, he might have wondered how the hell he could read the writing, bearing in mind the fact that he was only 16 days old and writing hadn't been invented yet. "Hey, what are we supposed to do with this?" he asked the man, except the man wasn't there anymore. He shrugged, grinned with pleasure, and took the parcel back into the cave. 7 minutes later, of course, they'd opened the parcel. "What is it?" Pandora asked. Epimetheus shrugged again. "Hang on," he said. "There's writing on the side here." "What's writing?" "This is." "How absolutely wonderful." The writing said, "Congratulations! You have been chosen as a lucky winner in our special Grand Gala free-to-enter prize draw. Please accept this wonderful alarm clock radio, batteries not included, as your special introductory gift. Absolutely free. Narrators know one of my actual gifts that I got as a kid, and I can actually list them off in my hand, strange enough. But I was 12, and I went to the department store, the Co-op, and I used my savings, £7, get myself a clock radio. I'll never forget that. And it was a pretty good one as well. But, I had to have my clock radio. I just needed a clock radio. And I'd saved and saved and saved and saved. I had £7 and I got myself a clock radio from the Co-op. 3rd floor. Anyway, let's try that again. Please accept this wonderful alarm clock radio, batteries not included, narrator's note, mine was wired and it plugged into the mains, as your special introductory gift, absolutely free. All you have to do to be allowed to keep your wonderful new free gift is to select 6 items of your choice from the enclosed catalogue, crammed with exciting special offers, chosen with you, yes you, in mind, and let us have your order plus your check within 7 working days. So hurry." "Gosh," said Pandora, after a long pause. "What's a catalogue?" "This is, I suppose," Epimetheus replied, lifting a thick glossy book out of the carton. He flicked a couple of pages and whistled. "Hey," he whispered, "you wait till you see what's in here." The very next day the order arrived, an electric blender, plug not supplied, a video recorder, a washing machine, a power drill, a microwave oven, and an exercise bicycle. All tucked in with the packaging, an invoice for $3,630.95, including delivery and packaging. By the afternoon of that day, there was a certain coolness in the atmosphere at the cave. Epimetheus, if asked to account for it, would have explained by saying that Pandora had cracked the jug on the blender, jammed the washing machine and broken the exercise bicycle by over-vigorous use. Pandora's version would have been that Epimetheus had made a complete mess of wiring up the plugs and plumbing in the washing machine, with the result that all the appliances had blown themselves up and the floor of the cave was an inch deep in suds and soapy water. In addition, there had been a degree of asperity in the discussion as to who was going to pay the bill. Now it is not one of my first times I ever got a brand new washing machine. I forgot to take off the transit bolts. Did I know there was transit bolts on it? No, I didn't. Did I learn there was transit bolts on it by dancing all over the kitchen? Yeah. Hey, back in the day. It occurred to neither of them to ask where the electricity supply and the mains water had come from. Partly because they were innocents living in the first dawn of the Golden Age, but narrators note, my God! But mostly because they were too busy arguing over whose fault it was that Epimetheus had used the electric drill to drill slap bang through the middle of a power cable, after which anything to do with the electricity supply was pretty well academic. The next morning they overslept. The alarm clock radio didn't work because A, Epimetheus had put the batteries in the wrong way, or B, because Pandora had set it up all wrong, despite Epimetheus's totally lucid explanation of how to do it. What finally woke them was the sound of the bailiffs breaking in to repossess the blender, the video recorder, the washing machine, the microwave, the power drill and the exercise bicycle. This led inevitably to a free and frank exchange of views on the subject of budget management, impulse buying, and some people who were so mean that the other people couldn't be expected to live with them 1 minute longer, which was in turn interrupted by the arrival of the men from the electricity company to disconnect the supply for non-payment of the bill. By nightfall, the cave was empty. Pandora and Epimetheus had moved to smaller, damper caves at opposite ends of the mountain and were corresponding bitterly by carrier pigeon over who was to get the alarm clock radio. As the argument raged and the air vibrated with the clatter of hurrying wings, something moved at the bottom of the original box, out of which the free gift had come. It stirred. It blinked. Feebly it spread stunted wings and lifted itself into the air. In their excitement, Pandora and Epimetheus, narrators know that frickin' name, had overlooked the little creature that slow, patient, long-suffering stowaway in the box of troubles. It didn't mind. It suffered long. Painfully stiff after its long confinement, it fluttered away towards Pandora's cave on its message of hope. As you will have guessed, the little creature's name was Litigation, friend to all wretched mortals who have suffered wrongs and been oppressed. Next morning, when it perched on the rock outside Epimetheus's hovel and handed him a writ, it had somehow grown slightly larger, and maybe even a touch fatter, but it had deep grey eyes that seemed to say, "Trust me." By the time it arrived back at Pandora's cave bearing a counter writ, it was the size of an ostrich and virtually spherical, and its soft velvety paws had been replaced by whacking great talons. By then, of course, it was ever so slightly too late. Now, Lundqvist didn't put it quite like that, of course. His account was rather more pithy, but that, more or less, was the basic outline. Ooh. So, Pandora and Epimetheus had fallen out, all over money, which is always the way, isn't it, generally? I wonder what's going to happen with them. I wonder how that's going to be woven into this story. I wonder how it's going to be connected to who they're going to go and see, our erstwhile heroes, as their lawyers. And what's happened to our Norse gods? We need a bit of a catch-up with what's going on with them, because last time we saw them, they were rattling across the skies in a wonderful steam engine. But poddling back to Pandora and Epimetheus, it's interesting that the Pandora's Box story has been twiddled about to become litigation, and all based on the troubles of money. I like how Tom Holt has done that. That's a nice little on that one. And talking of nice little of things, just a little anecdote from the other day when I went to the doctor's. So I don't know if you've heard the term 6 and 7. But I was like, I've got no clue. And of course, like, you've been hearing it, and you've been hearing it, and you've been hearing it. I mean, pretty much ignoring it until it comes up on radio too. So you're bottling along, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute. So I kind of like, paused the show, and I was like, asked AI, and I was like, what is, 6 and 7? So I got a sort of like an innocuous explanation of it from one of the AI bots that's out there, and carried on with the show. The show to which then the hosts used exactly the same explanation. They'd clearly just got their explanation as to what 6 and 7 was from AI also. It's crazy how it's permeating our society and culture and answering our questions, especially when we're asking questions about modern culture that makes us feel old. It's like 6 and 7, honestly. We used to say 6s and 7s. It's all 6s and 7s, it's like one or the other. But how it's evolved is quite phenomenal, really. But of course it's new. Nobody else has done it before, ever. Hey, it's a completely new concept. Yeah. It's like, comme ci, comme ça. Which one or the other, could be something that's ridiculous. It could be just a completely ridiculous statement, and it's one where they can use it and they can go, ha ha ha, you're old, you don't understand what we're talking about. And you're like, I don't care, to be honest. Sorry, genx here, just like we just don't care. I looked it up, found out what it was about, and really wasn't of any interest to me at all, apart from for a little anecdote from my YouTube channel. But that's our chapter for today. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're doing fine, and as ever, I appreciate you very, very much. Very, very much. And as we're getting into this time of year, as I said, please let me know if you're interested in some lives. I said I wanted to do the box of secrets, and that's still on the agenda, but it's winter story. It might even go through to January. We'll see how it goes with everything that's going on. But we're definitely going to keep doing odds and gods. Of course, that's priority. It's got to be done. But yes, the box of secrets is definitely a good story for the winter. Anyway, my lovely, lovely beans, if you're too hot, hydrate, take the shade, just relax, be chill. And if you're too cold, wrap up warm like a human burrito, lots of hoodies, lots of fleeces, lots of blankies, and a nice hot cup of tea, or a coffee if you prefer, or even a hot chocolate if you're feeling decadent. I love hot chocolate, but it hates me. So, TMI. Yes, anyway, above all else, I appreciate you, and take care, petal. See you next time.